Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a really extensive look into a philosophy of success that just genuinely turns traditional corporate thinking on its head. And that's from Art Williams' monumental work, Pushing Up People. This isn't just a book about management, It's really a blueprint for redefining success itself, not as something that comes from, inherited wealth or fancy credentials, but through sheer belief, attitude, and this really profound idea of lifting everyone around you up.
Thank you. The title really is the mission statement, isn't it? It guides every single principle. At its core, Pushing Up People is about, deep personal belief, accepting total responsibility, and just operating from the understanding that real lasting success, it doesn't come from pulling others down. It comes exclusively from helping every single person in your world rise up. So today we're going to walk through the principles and lessons that define this whole approach. And we have to start by challenging some conventional wisdom. Why so much of what society tells us is necessary for success is, it's just entirely misguided.
Right, and that immediately sets this very strong, almost anti-establishment tone, which is so rare in business philosophy. You're challenging the traditional ideas of who is even allowed to succeed.
Yeah.
For generations, the narrative has been pretty clear. Success is for the privileged.
Yeah.
The people born rich, high IQ, right background.
Yep.
And you firmly reject that. So let's unpack where that programming comes from.
I believe it started decades ago, with the big universities, and then it just fed right into the big corporations. And eventually our entire society sort of bought into the narrative. They tell people, maybe not explicitly, but it's there. If you're born wealthy or you come from the right side of the tracks, you're privileged. You deserve the best colleges, and so you deserve the best jobs.
And the opposite is true for everyone else.
And the opposite is true. If you happen to be born poor or from just an average background, you're just supposed to give up on those big dreams you have. And the same flawed logic applies to intellect. If you have an exceptionally high IQ, you're labeled a genius, and so you're entitled to the highest paying jobs. But if you have an average or low IQ, the system basically programs you to believe you have to accept low-level menial jobs. And I just have to state, unequivocally, this entire system of programming is fundamentally mistaken. It is dead wrong. Success isn't limited by outside factors like your parents' money or your test scores.
That's a powerful idea. And brings us to your distinction between what you call outside qualities, the degrees, the experience, the IQ, and the inside qualities. Things like heart, desire, commitment. So why are those conventional outside markers sometimes not just irrelevant, but maybe even liabilities in your philosophy?
It really comes down to action versus, endless analysis. Look, I'm not anti-education. I have a master's degree myself. And that experience, it built my self-confidence, my knowledge. But too often we're led to believe that these symbols of achievement are everything. And in business, I've often found that focusing too much on credentials can actually get in the way of success. It doesn't guarantee it.
So victory doesn't always go to the smartest person in the room.
Not at all. Paradoxically, it often doesn't. In my experience, the exceptionally smart people, the analysts, they often spend way too much valuable time trying to analyze every single variable. They read every paper. They're always looking for the quicker route, the easier route, the more scientifically perfect route. They research and research, but too often they just don't get around to actually doing anything.
Analysis paralysis.
Exactly. Analysis paralysis. So if I'm given the choice, I will take a doer with just plain old common sense and a strong work ethic any day of the week. I'll take that person over the brilliant analyst who never ships the product, never makes the call, never fully commits. Nothing in the world is cheaper or more useless than a perfect, good idea with zero action behind it.
That makes a lot of intuitive sense, especially in a dynamic business. But here's where I have to push back a little on the conventional wisdom. We're in a world that is governed by, regulation, finance, incredible complexity. If a business leader deliberately downplays the value of a high IQ or elite credentials, aren't they risking huge mistakes in areas like finance or legal compliance, where you really need that deep technical knowledge?
And that's the fear that the system programs into us. But let's be clear. We don't reject intelligence. We reject the reliance on intelligence as a substitute for action and for common sense. A company absolutely needs technical experts, of course, but that technical expertise should serve the vision of the leader and the doers. It shouldn't dictate whether the vision is even attempted. The key is who you choose to promote into leadership. Leaders need the wisdom to hire the smart people for the complex jobs, but they have to make sure those smart people aren't so smart that they scare the whole organization out of taking action.
And your own story really drives this point home.
It does. My own journey shows how ridiculous this focus on the resume can be. When I left coaching, I set out to make my mark in business. I remember applying for a company president job at a major firm, and the executive job placement firm in Atlanta, they reviewed the applications. My background: former teacher, football coach, no MBA. Oh, throw that in the trash can. They never called me back. My lack of the expected credentials, the outside qualities, was enough for them to just dismiss me completely. And that experience, as painful as it was, it solidified my core belief. The system is way too focused on the paper, the resume, the symbols, and not nearly focused enough on the person.
So if those outside factors are secondary, then what is the ultimate defining winning ingredient? What is that intangible quality that a leader has to recognize?
It's the heart, it's the desire, it's that unquantifiable will to win. Think about it. There has never been, and there will never be, a test that can adequately measure the heart of a man or a woman. You can't look inside people and tell what profound things they're truly capable of. You just can't calculate determination.
So how do you measure it?
The only way to really measure that potential, that desire, is to put them out on the playing field. Give them a genuine opportunity to prove what they can do and provide the leadership and support they need. The will to win is an inner, intangible quality that these traditional credential-focused companies just don't value because it doesn't fit neatly on a spreadsheet.
So for leaders who are recruiting today, what does this mean in a practical sense? If you're not just looking for the MBA, who is that perfect person to hire? And how do you spot that heart you're talking about?
The perfect person to hire at any level is the person who deep down wants to be a winner. The one who is still willing to dream big and, crucially, is willing to pay the price for that success. You often find these people have been butchered up by past cynical experiences. They've been burned. They think every manager is going to cheat them or hurt them. They're suspicious, and they just need a chance to believe in a mission and a leader again.
So you're looking for that spark.
You're looking for that fire. Show me someone who is willing to take a chance one more time, willing to dream one more time, and willing to put in the hours. And I'll show you a person who has the capacity to do something truly great. It's the leader's job to help restore that belief they have in themselves.
This philosophy, it really shifts the entire definition of what a boss is. You quote Admiral Grace Jones, who said, "Managers manage things, leaders lead people." Can you unpack that distinction between management and true leadership, especially in the context of people power?
That quote is so important because it defines your priorities. The art of people management absolutely requires that the manager takes on the higher responsibilities of leadership. A manager can just focus on the technical stuff: inventory, profit margins, the workflow on a spreadsheet. But a true leader has to accept a much greater responsibility. They have to help their people achieve their personal goals in addition to the company's goals.
Right, because if you prioritize the technical over the human,
You miss the fundamental truth that the greatest power, the greatest untapped resource in any business is people power. If you lose that human connection, if your focus is purely transactional, your people become less motivated, less valuable than the office furniture. Leaders see people as assets with unlimited and often dormant potential.
you even translate this commitment to people power into your company's terminology. You famously never call people in your organization employees.
That's absolutely right.
Right.
We don't have managers and employees. We have leaders and potential leaders.
Yeah.
This comes directly from my experience as a football coach. I learned very early on that no single person is more important than another. The star quarterback can't do his job without the total commitment of his 10 teammates blocking for him. The success of the team is always only as good as its weakest player's dedication.
And that holds true in business.
It holds true. The nearest recruits are the experienced managers of the future. The failure of every new member to reach their potential is a potential loss of leadership down the road. So if you recognize everyone from the day they walk in the door as a leader or a potential leader, you are forced to prioritize their development from day one.
And what are those people, these leaders in waiting, what are they fundamentally looking for? I mean, beyond money, what are the basic desires that motivate them?
Money is the outcome, sure, but it's not the primary engine. People really want 3 specific things from their career. 1, they want to be their own boss, to have some autonomy. 2, they want to control their own destiny, which really means controlling their income and their time. And 3, they want to work at something they truly believe in, something bigger than just themselves.
The American dream, basically.
It's the very core of it. These are the desires that built this country, the desire to stand on your own 2 feet and build security for your family. And often, these dreams are just lying dormant. They've been suppressed or shut down by past jobs. A true leader understands these dreams are still there, just waiting for a chance to grow. And it's the leader's number one job to help bring out that talent because deep down, everybody wants to be somebody special.
That foundation leads us right into your management philosophy, which is really built on rejecting fear and intimidation. In a world focused on quarterly results, management by intimidation can seem like the quickest fix. Why is that approach so deeply flawed?
Because it's the easy path. It is without a doubt. It's simple, it's direct, and it provides an immediate but totally misleading burst of activity. But a true, lasting leader refuses to take the easy way out. Fear as a motivator is only temporary. It's extremely short range. And critically, it just destroys the underlying relationship, the security, the trust.
Huh.
And it builds up this deep resentment that will just eat away at the company from the inside.
Can you give an example of that, like with an underperforming salesperson?
Sure. Take a salesman who's underperforming. If I use fear, if I threaten him and say, if you don't double your sales this month, you're fired, he might. He might double his sales out of sheer panic.
Yeah.
But what have I actually gained? I've destroyed my relationship with him. He has no security. And I've built this psychological wall of fear that I might never be able to get over. He's now just a short-term commodity.
So what's the alternative?
Well, what if I spend that same amount of time focused on leadership? Talking to him sincerely about the fantastic future he has, reminding him of his strengths, discussing the bright future that's available to him if he can just get his sales up. He's likely to wind up making triple the sales compared to the fear model. And crucially, I've also built a positive long-term relationship where he feels secure enough to grow beyond that initial slump.
That distinction is so critical.
Yeah.
But if we accept that the threat of firing can get a temporary sales spike,
Yeah.
say double the sales,
Yeah.
how does a leader fight that temptation, especially when the quarterly numbers are right around the corner?
Because that short-term gain is a catastrophic long-term loss.
Mm.
What are the consequences of relying on that fear-based model over time? You're building a toxic, tense atmosphere. People won't come to you with their problems, so the problems just fester and get worse. They'll be afraid to be creative or express a new idea. They won't take chances. I've walked into offices where you can just feel the tension in the air, and that tension does not produce winners. It produces fearful people who are content with doing just enough to not get fired.
In contrast to that, you emphasize treating people with basic courtesy and respect, saying people are fed up with being treated like kids. How does that apply to something like sales techniques?
It means treating every single person, whether they're a client or a new associate, as a capable, intelligent adult. I mean, look at the history of the insurance industry. For years, salesmen relied on these high-pressure pitches because they just assumed clients were too ignorant to understand the business. They'd overwhelm people with jargon instead of just clearly explaining the simple concept.
And that created a lot of distrust.
A profound public distrust of the whole industry. When we decided to treat clients and our own people with respect, believing they can understand if you give them clear facts, it built immediate, lasting trust. And that courtesy has to be tied to absolutely fair standards inside the company. Promotions, pay, recognition. It has to be based solely on a standard of excellence, period. Not on prejudice. That standard has to be the only filter.
And when you're making those tough, purely business-oriented decisions, say operational changes, you advise leaders to measure the impact not just on the bottom line, but on the people. Can you give a specific example of that?
Absolutely. In a sales organization, especially with new reps, income is all commission-based. They might be struggling financially at first. Now, from an administrative standpoint, it is always simpler and cheaper to pay your sales reps only once a month. Less paperwork, less overhead.
But that would be a terrible decision for the people.
A profoundly dumb decision from a people standpoint. New people need the psychological security of a weekly check. That weekly check, even if it's small, is a vital way of measuring their progress and seeing the tangible results of their effort. It doesn't really affect the company's profits, but that rep's confidence and sense of security has to count exponentially more than saving a few administrative dollars. You have to consider the human need for assurance in every single decision.
That shows the proactive side of care. But moving to the deeper side of it, you talk about the need for unconditional commitment.
Yeah.
That leaders should build bonds usually reserved for family. How does a business leader show that kind of genuine care without blurring professional lines?
You have to commit to living with people through the good times and, critically, through the bad times. The closest, most powerful relationships are built not on the golf course, but during tough, pressure-filled situations. So many managers today, they ignore or even run away from their people when they face personal or professional problems. And that immediate withdrawal, that fear of messy human problems, it just breaks trust forever.
You learned this through your own family.
I learned this deeply. My wife and I, we made it clear to our children, you are going to make mistakes, but there is no mistake you can make that I haven't made myself or that we can't overcome together. You must never, ever cut people off when they disappoint you or fall short. If you do, they will never trust you again. You build good people in business exactly like you build good kids by standing right there with them during their downtimes, offering support and unwavering belief in their future. You have to be proud when they win and care about them just as much, maybe even more, when they lose.
That's a demanding level of loyalty.
Yeah.
What happens when criticism comes from the outside, from competitors or the press? How do you balance defending your people while still demanding accountability?
It means the leader always puts their people before themselves, and definitely before outsiders. A huge part of this is standing up for your team immediately when they're attacked by external forces. When I was coaching, I was incredibly tough on my players internally. I set the highest standard, but I never, under any circumstances, allowed criticism from students, townspeople, or the local press to stand.
So you became a shield for them.
If anything negative came from the outside, we stuck together like a family. We were ready to go to war for each other. And that outward show of loyalty, it builds this invaluable, deep feeling of security and bond within the group. It tells them, you are safe here, we're in this fight together. It doesn't negate internal accountability. It just means that criticism is delivered privately by the leader from a position of love and belief, not fear.
Once that deep bond is there, we can turn to the engine of motivation. You call praise and recognition the secret. You argue it's way more effective to focus on people's strengths rather than criticizing their weaknesses. Why is recognition so powerful?
Because recognition fulfills these essential, fundamental inner needs for adults that are just tragically ignored in most management structures. People have survival needs, yes, but once those are met, they crave three specific things. 1, the need to feel they belong to a worthwhile group. 2, the need to feel appreciated. And 3, the need to feel recognized for their contributions. Praise and recognition address all three of those needs directly. I mean, if you praise kids and make them feel seen and special, they gain the confidence to conquer the world. This principle works exactly the same way with adults. The key is just consistency. You have to do it consciously every single day until it becomes a core way of life.
So how does a leader reinforce successful behavior, especially with new team members whose early wins, like making one tough phone call, might seem tiny to a veteran?
You treat them like a conquering hero, even for achievements that seem small to you. Imagine a new sales rep who finally makes a passable number of appointments after struggling with that fear of rejection. That moment might be the hardest thing they've ever forced themselves to do. As the leader, you should take him out to lunch, talk about that success publicly, put him on a pedestal for his courage. He deserves it. By praising that specific action, the person is immediately eager to repeat the action that gave him those good feelings. You won't have to cajole him to make more calls the next day. He'll want to do it.
You had an early example of this from your coaching days, where recognition for a behavior motivated others to copy it.
That was a powerful lesson. My first year coaching, I took the team to a camp with 5 other, much more established teams. We were the only team that implemented this grueling standard, getting up at 6 a.m. for a voluntary 3-mile run. And naturally, the kids from the other teams just teased my players constantly about their crazy coach.
You kept running.
We kept running, and the results followed. We won every single game we played at that camp. By Wednesday afternoon, we'd beaten every other team. And what happened next was so telling. The next morning, 2 of those teams that had been teasing us were out there running with us. By Friday, all 6 teams were running. People notice success, and they notice the recognition that comes with it. They are very quick to copy methods that demonstrably work.
That success breeds imitation. Let's get into some of the practical strategies. The story about the T-shirts and your wife's reaction is fantastic.
Oh, it was a point of friction, for sure. My wife, Angela, she was extremely skeptical. When I decided to start giving out simple T-shirt awards, just like I did with the high school players, she looked at me and said, "Art, you cannot give grown-ups T-shirt awards. They will think you've lost your mind."
But you trusted the principle.
I trusted the principle. We started printing simple slogans on them like, "I ain't average, I am a stud, I am somebody." And 7 years later, they had become the most popular, most sought-after awards we gave out. The power isn't in the cost of the shirt. It's in the public, physical display of belonging and achievement. Recognition doesn't have to be expensive. A handwritten note, a personal phone call, publishing a leader sheet where people see their name in print. It all works. I have seen multimillionaires go absolutely crazy if they fall one slot on the leader sheet. Financial success doesn't eliminate that fundamental human need for recognition.
When you hold a major awards ceremony, you have very specific rules about how to do it to maximize the motivational impact. What are those?
To maximize the impact, the ceremony has to do three things. First, you have to recognize a significant portion of the audience. I aim for 20 to 25%. If you have 300 people, give out 75 awards. Second, you have to make the ceremony entertaining, the highlight of the whole meeting. And third, and this is the most important part, you can never, ever just give a quick handshake and a plaque. You have to spend a few moments talking specifically and sincerely about that person's sacrifice, their history, their achievements, even if it makes the meeting run until 2 in the morning. That personal touch is everything.
That brings us to the tricky area of criticism. You advise leaders to be incredibly slow to criticize one-on-one. Why is one negative comment so damaging, even if it's surrounded by 99 positive ones?
Because that one negative thing is often the only thing the person will remember. If you criticize someone individually, you crush their confidence. You make them feel worthless, and they start to believe they can't do anything right. That single interaction will completely overshadow weeks of praise. So if you need to address poor performance, spend your time making heroes out of the people who are doing the job right. The poor performer will see the love and attention others are getting, and they will naturally improve their performance to regain that group approval. You get the same result without saying anything hurtful.
But sometimes a problem just has to be addressed directly, right? For risk reasons or systemic issues. How do you deliver that criticism without singling someone out and embarrassing them?
The best time to address a negative is almost always in a group setting. When several people are there, you can address the core problem generally, without ever calling out an individual. My managers learned to use what we call the hint and motivate method.
Hint and motivate.
I just hint at the existence of the problem, maybe with a humorous example. And then I immediately pivot to expressing total unwavering confidence in their ability to overcome it. That way, you get your point across, the standard needs raising, but the person still feels the leader's belief in them is absolute. You address the issue, but preserve their dignity.
Let's move to a really unique element of your culture, the role of the spouse. You call the spouse the forgotten power. Why do most businesses ignore or even discourage mixing personal and business lives?
It's a huge oversight. It's rooted in this mistaken belief that work and life are in two separate boxes. Many businesses won't even hire a husband and wife in the same company. They treat spouses like accessories, expected to sit by the pool at conventions. This is just blindness. The ups and downs of family life, financial stress, health issues, they have a tremendous, unavoidable impact on business performance. If you know the families, you can better understand and deal with the problems that affect the job.
And your realization about the true price a spouse pays.
Yeah.
You describe that moment as devastating.
It was. It happened during a really tough financial period for one of our young sales reps. His wife approached me, and her desperation was just heartbreaking. She said, "Art, you always talk about paying the price for success. I'm willing to do anything. But what is my price? Just tell me what it is, and I'll pay it." And in that moment, the true weight of their situation just hit me. I realized spouses have this totally unique, unspoken set of financial and emotional concerns, especially when you're living on commission. They pay an invisible price.
And that realization led to creating the Partners Organization.
Exactly. We immediately began actively recognizing the immense power of the partner. Angela, my wife, started traveling with me, speaking directly to the spouses about her own experiences, how she coped, the sacrifices. Today, we have an active partners organization with both male and female spouses. We insist on including them in all major meetings. We put both names on awards. When two people are united, working toward the same shared goals, they can achieve so much more than one person alone. Ignoring the spouse means you're ignoring half the potential power of your team.
Let's shift to the operational pillars of success, starting with freedom with responsibility. You argue people crave independence and ownership. How do you grant that freedom without it becoming chaos?
The key is that freedom cannot exist without its counterpart: total responsibility. People need to feel a real sense of ownership over their job. They want the freedom to control their income, to make decisions, and to succeed or fail based on their own efforts. I learned this when I was young. I bought my first car in high school with my own money. And I took care of that car meticulously. I was so protective of it because I had paid for it. The freedom to use it came with the total responsibility for its upkeep. That taught me a lesson I never would have learned if the car had just been handed to me.
So freedom is the reward for accepting responsibility. What's the single toughest responsibility a leader has to shoulder?
The toughest thing is accepting the blame for mistakes without making any excuses. At all. When things go wrong, your first impulse is to blame the competition, the economy, someone else on the team. But you have to resist that. You have to point the finger at yourself. As O.J. Simpson once said, the day you take complete responsibility for yourself, the day you stop making any excuses, is the day you start to the top. If you make excuses, you instantly lose the trust of your people, and you lose the chance to learn from the mistake.
That sounds like it was drilled into you very early in your coaching career.
It was literally the first lesson I ever got. When I graduated and took my first assistant coaching job, I was eager, a little nervous. After practice, I went up to my head coach and asked, "Coach, what do you want me to do with my group today?" He just looked at me and gave me the lesson of a lifetime. He said, "Art, I hired you to coach backs. Now, those backs are yours. I want them ready to play on Friday night. I didn't hire you to tell you what to do."
Wow, freedom with responsibility right there.
The perfect definition. I had complete freedom to do my own thing, run my own drills, but the total responsibility for the results on Friday night, whether we won or lost, was absolutely and totally mine.
Let's move to commitment, which you call the first step to greatness. Why is total, unwavering commitment so rare, and how does it change a person's potential?
Because most people spend their lives running from one half-hearted commitment to another. They're always looking for a quick and easy way out, always thinking the grass is greener somewhere else. They commit to something until the first big obstacle shows up, and then they're off again, looking for a softer option. But you don't get unlimited chances. At some point, you have to stop running and say, "This is it. I'm going to stand my ground and fight until I win." That total commitment is the internal decision that eliminates the possibility of quitting. It builds the mental toughness you need. Problems stop being excuses and start being opportunities.
You quantify this with what you call the little bit more principle. What separates the average achiever from the truly massive winner?
It is entirely the little bit more principle. The person who really wins big always does everything that's required of them. And then, without being asked, they go on and do just a little bit more. That total commitment gives you that extra, plus the extra energy it takes to keep going when you're exhausted, frustrated, and when everyone else has gone home.
Could you share a story that illustrates what that little bit more looks like in practice for, say, a top executive?
I think of one of our top executives, a true superstar, who became financially independent many times over, earned over $100,000 in a single month. He works incredibly hard all day, 8, 10, 12 hours. That should be enough. But several nights a week, long after everyone else has gone home, he picks up the phone and starts calling his people across the country. He calls the struggling ones, checking in, offering advice, encouraging them, helping them work through their problems. He does all he's paid to do during the day, and then he dedicates those extra uncompensated hours to his team. That relentless willingness to keep going. That is the precise difference between a good career and overwhelming success.
You also argue that this commitment has to be anchored to a sense of purpose, to become a crusader. In your business, which is financial products, what happens when you commit to something bigger than just profit?
Our company was built around an intense, passionate belief in a concept. Buy term and invest the difference. We champion term insurance because it separates protection from investment, allowing the consumer to buy cheaper protection and invest the difference in higher return vehicles. We were so profoundly convinced that our method was ethically better for the consumer that this belief became our entire foundation, our cause. We developed a powerful crusading spirit, and that conviction transforms work from a burden into fun. We couldn't wait to get to work. When your career is based on something more meaningful than just personal gain, you see yourself as part of some great, necessary event.
That crusading spirit must be necessary to withstand the backlash that comes from challenging powerful institutions?
Absolutely. When you commit to being different, when you become a crusader, people are going to shoot at you. They will attack your character, call you names, try to pull you down. I was completely unprepared for the sheer volume of negative reaction when we started, but the criticism, paradoxically, it just made us stronger. It purified our ranks and intensified our determination. When people are convinced they're doing the right thing for the customer, no amount of controversy can stop them.
And sometimes a personal, sobering experience is what's needed to really ignite that spirit in someone.
That's right. I remember one salesman who started out just trying to make a living. He was doing okay. Then a close relative of his passed away unexpectedly, leaving a wife and 8 children with totally inadequate insurance. That devastating experience brought him face to face with the very real human pain of our cause. From that time on, he became a madman for the cause, unstoppable. His tires were slashed, he was denied a bank loan, but he never wavered. Leaders have to show their people the tangible good they can do. For example, have them personally deliver the first death claim check. That transforms a salesman into a crusader.
That intensity leads us to attitude, which you say determines the road taken. We all face doubt and pressure. How does one cultivate a positive attitude when the world is constantly throwing curveballs?
Attitude is fundamentally self-made. It's not something you can buy or learn in college. It requires total conscious effort and daily practice. You are the sole decider of whether your life is a pain in the neck or a wonderful experience. A successful friend of mine, Stanley Beyer, put it perfectly. Everyone, even the most successful people, has fears and doubts. They aren't positive 100% of the time. Success just means maintaining that positive attitude for longer periods of time. The most successful people still doubt themselves, but they just hang in there with a positive mindset long enough until things work out. You have to work at it every single day like a muscle.
And what's the critical safety valve responsibility a manager has when they're struggling with a negative attitude?
They have a non-negotiable responsibility to their team. If a manager is having a problem or feeling negative, they must find someone at their level or above to talk with and get that negative energy out of their system. They should never, under any circumstances, pass their personal disappointments or fears down to their people who are looking to them for strength and encouragement. You have to be a source of strength, not shared misery.
And finally, how should leaders prevent group meetings from devolving into unproductive gripe sessions?
You have to be vigilant. Positive people focus on winning, on solutions, not on complaints. I learned to avoid things like suggestion boxes because all the complaints always come from the negative people, the non-producers. The winners are focused on action. So when minor complaints are raised in a meeting, you have to cut them off immediately with positive encouragement. Say things like, "I know you can work that out, Joe. You're too sharp to let that stop you." Respond with a positive comment, and people will quickly realize you're not going to join them in their misery.
Let's discuss expectation setting. Your principle is direct. You get what you expect. How does a leader's expectation level shape the performance of their whole team?
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you implicitly accept being average or core, life will absolutely make you that way. If you expect to be successful and happy, and you make the internal decision that you won't accept anything less, the chances are exponentially higher that you will be. People will consistently rise or fall to the standards you set for them. When I coached, I banned the words, "I can't," from my team's vocabulary. If a player was caught saying it, the person who heard it gave him 3 licks with a paddle. A
Wow.
physical, visceral reminder that he was capable of anything. If you, as the leader, let people settle for modest goals, you'll end up with average people instead of superstars.
So the leader has to constantly be a coach, pushing people beyond what they would settle for on their own.
That is precisely the role. No individual will push himself as hard as he will with a dedicated coach. If a coach told his team to practice by themselves, they wouldn't inflict the same level of punishment or push themselves the same way. As the leader, you must set the standard of excellence, first by your own example, and then enforce it for your people. They need that coach, and they'll never resent you for believing they can accomplish great things.
Before setting goals, you say the first step has to be a profound dream, which acts as the emotional glue. Once that dream is there, what's the right way to structure goal setting?
You have to know where you're going, or you'll never get there. Think about that famous Yale study. Only 3% of the graduating class had written goals. 20 years later, that 3% had accomplished more than the other 97% combined. I learned to apply the 6-step formula from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. 1. Have a specific goal. 2. Set a specific deadline. 3. Develop a clear plan. 4. Decide the exact price you're willing to pay. 5. Write it all down. And 6. Think about it every day.
That's a simple but powerful structure. Can you share how you applied that formula to your own life when you transitioned from coaching to financial independence?
I used it down to the last digit. In 1969, I was earning $10,700 a year as a coach. My specific goal was to establish a guaranteed income of $30,000 a year for life. My deadline was 10 years, by the age of 38. I wrote it all down. My plan involved taking the $40,000 I had saved and calculating its growth at 10% over 10 years, which would get me to $100,000. But to get the $30,000 a year, I needed a principal of $300,000, so I was $200,000 short. My calculation showed I had to save exactly $1,000 a month every single month for 10 straight years. The price was giving up the security and passion of coaching to focus purely on building that financial security. And Hill's formula worked because it eliminated all the ambiguity and forced me to commit totally to the sacrifices.
That focus on immediate effort is critical, which leads to the magic of 90 days. Why that specific short time frame?
Because anyone can force themselves to do anything for 90 days. It establishes an immediate sense of urgency and gives you those crucial little victories. For example, you set an aggressive goal of making 10 sales a week, and you just work like a maniac for 90 days to hit it. What you couldn't keep up for years, you can force yourself to do for 3 months. And when you accomplish that, you build massive self-confidence. You prove to yourself you can sustain a high level of activity. And then your regular long-term goal of, say, 4 sales a week seems easy by comparison.
And to make sure goals are taken seriously, you used a system of reinforcement, rewarding success, and maybe more controversially, punishing failure.
Positive and negative reinforcement, when it's applied correctly, it works. When I was building a new football program, our big goal was to become state champions. Our smaller goal was to get better every single game. Till we won and showed improvement, Monday practice was light, in shorts. But if we won but didn't improve, if we were sloppy, we put on heavy pads and had an extra long, hard practice regardless of the score. And if we lost, we practiced on Saturday. You need that in your business life. Reward yourself for success. A trip, something meaningful. But if you're getting beaten, you have to have a Saturday practice. You have to work twice as hard that week to break the losing streak. Never be satisfied with winning but not improving.
Finally, we have to tackle the biggest psychological obstacle, the fear of failure. You cite the philosophy of the Babe Ruth principle.
Babe Ruth hit more home runs than anyone else, but he also struck out more times than anyone else. And that's the message for a winner. If you're going to swing for the fences and win big, you're going to take massive chances, and you will fall flat a few times. But if you ultimately reach your goals, you'll only be remembered for your accomplishments, not your strikeouts. Fear of failing holds people back 10 times more than any lack of talent or opportunity.
So how do you practically overcome that daily stress and worry that just prevents action?
You don't waste time and energy worrying about things that haven't happened yet or things you can't control. A mentor once told me, 99% of the things you fear never happen. So stop worrying. Just go out there and follow your instincts. In business, you have to prepare rigorously, but then you have to trust your own common sense. The more a person worries about making mistakes, the more mistakes they actually make. You just have to go out there and let it all hang out.
You break down that fear of failure into 4 basic categories that leaders need to help their people eliminate.
These are the 4 fears that limit potential. First, the fear of competition. Don't get sidetracked worrying about what the competition is doing. You beat them by ignoring them and concentrating 100% on your own business. Second, the fear of controversy. If you try to do something truly different, people will shoot at you. The alternative is being average. If you choose to be special, you have to accept the criticism. You might have to choose between being special and being popular. Third, the fear of what other people say. This is the fear of people close to you judging your career. I felt this when I started selling insurance. I kept making up fancy names for myself. You can't put your self-worth in the hands of others. And fourth, the fear of things you can't control. Life is too short to worry about things you absolutely cannot control, like the weather. The only things you can ever truly control are your attitude and your daily activity. Focus all your energy there.
And maybe the most insidious fear is the fear of giving it all, the fear that makes you fail the mirror test.
That's the subtle, self-sabotaging fear where you intentionally hold something back. For years, I was so scared I would fail in business that I couldn't give it my genuine, total best effort. I always had a ready-made excuse in my back pocket. That way, I could blame failure on the economy or bad luck instead of myself. One day, I looked in the mirror and I just did not like the person I saw. A man who was holding back, not living up to his potential. I failed the mirror test. And in that moment, I decided I was going all out. If I failed, at least I would know I gave it my absolute best shot. The moment I made that total commitment, everything fell into place because I had psychologically eliminated the possibility of quitting.
This level of commitment has to be rooted in unwavering character. You dedicate a whole section to stand for something, arguing that reputation and character are ultimately more important than anything else.
Absolutely. The bottom line does not justify everything. Character is the foundation. Before you can ever hope to be a great leader, you must first commit to becoming a great person. We're talking about real character, honesty, integrity, loyalty, sincerity. You can't fool people for long.
Hmm.
Your reputation is at stake with every single decision you make. You have to strive to be right ethically and practically 100% of the time. Remember, people don't join your company because they trusted the product. They join because they trusted you. If your core principles are wrong, sooner or later, people will find out and your career will be ruined.
And this commitment to integrity is crucial when you're building with quality. Where do new managers most often sacrifice quality for speed?
They sacrifice it most often in the hiring process. They get comfortable or lazy or desperate, and they start hiring warm bodies instead of taking the painstaking time to select people with extraordinary want to. Reckless building might give you temporary growth, but it always comes back as bad business, damaged reputation, and financial loss later on. Your people are your greatest resource. Never sacrifice quality for speed. And effective leaders often spend way too much time trying to motivate non-producers while neglecting the doers who are already eager to work. You have to focus your attention where the desire already exists.
You talk about the value of time and effort using the analogy of compound interest. Explain the compounding effect in a career.
Effort, experience, reputation, commitment. They all compound exponentially over time, just like compound interest. If you stick with one career, one mission for long enough, your initial efforts start to draw interest, and then that interest draws even more interest. The ultimate payoff will be geometrically more than you ever thought. This is why people who constantly jump careers, always impatient for immediate success, never allow the time for their efforts to pay off. They lose the compounding effect. And crucially, when your business is doing really well, you must not decrease your efforts. In fact, you should intensify them, or you'll lose that advantage 2 or 3 years down the line when the headwinds hit.
This dedication to principle, even over immediate gain, requires a leader to be willing to start over if they have to.
You can never compromise your core principles for a quick business deal. If a potential deal involves unethical practices, you don't do it, even if it promises to accelerate your business. If terminating someone who is hurting the team will cost you money in the short term, you must still do it in spite of the financial cost. You always do what is right, regardless of the money. If you need to liquidate and start completely over to maintain your integrity, then that is the price you must be willing to pay.
To maintain the vital momentum of the organization, you stress that leaders must always move ahead and that a lack of activity is the biggest threat. What does that momentum look like?
Momentum is hard to describe, but you know it when you see it. It looks like organized confusion. Phones are ringing, people are running in and out. There's a palpable, total, infectious involvement. If an office is too quiet, too formal, I instantly start to worry that nothing meaningful is being done. You, as the leader, you set that tone. You have to develop an intense sense of urgency. I channel my impatience into a positive sense of urgency. Do it right now. Why wait until Monday? Your competition isn't waiting.
So how do you advise leaders to manage their time, to maximize this activity, and avoid getting bogged down in minor things?
You have to think big. Don't major in minor things. 2/3 of a manager's time can be tragically spent on things that are secondary to their main purpose. For example, a high-producing salesperson should never spend hours checking their pay statements. Administrative staff handles that. If you're out there making the maximum number of sales, you'll be so successful it won't matter if one sale doesn't get credited right. Salespeople need to focus on maximum activity, not administrative details. That's also why I strongly discourage unnecessary scheduled meetings. I believe in emergency meetings, called only when something immediately important needs to be discussed, to establish that sense of urgency.
And to monitor that activity and get unfiltered information, you commit a lot of time to eyeball contact.
Yes, I travel constantly about 3 days a week to different offices. I have no choice. How can I know what's really going on, what the morale is, if I don't get out there and see it with my own eyes? Nobody else can give you the raw, unfiltered information you get talking people one-on-one. You also need to constantly bring in new blood, new people to stir up excitement among the old-timers. The enthusiasm of a new person is infectious.
Crucially, after demanding total commitment, you address the need for balance by outlining your personal priorities. What must leaders prioritize to have a full, successful life?
You have to have your priorities straight, and they have to be unshakable. God first, family second, business third. If your only goal is business success and money, I guarantee you will grow to be a bitter, lonely old man or woman. True success requires a deliberate balance between your spiritual, family, and business life. Spiritual life is essential because it builds faith and hope, which you need to withstand the tough times. And critically, with family, you cannot put your family on hold until you become a millionaire. If you do, you will be there alone when you reach your goals. You have to apply the same leadership principles you use in business to your family life. Treat your family well. Be an example of balanced living. And good health diet and exercise is absolutely necessary to enjoy the fruits of your success. As General Patton said, an active mind cannot exist in an inactive body. You just can't afford to ignore your physical development.
As we conclude this philosophy, we turn to the idea of giving. You call the failure to grow the disease of selfness. What happens when a successful person is taken over by the focus on I and my?
When people reach a certain level of success, they sometimes reach a peak of profound unhappiness because selfness rules their thinking. I and my become dominant thoughts. They start to see the success of others as a threat to their own status, and they lose the desire to share knowledge or opportunity. The psychiatrist Alfred Adler warned that the individual who is not interested in his fellow man has the greatest difficulties in life.
So the power is in giving.
The power of the giving principle is transformative. You receive strength, energy, love, happiness, and greater success by genuinely giving to others without any expectation of a return. The practical business application is simple. Success rewards those who offer better products or services. Give generously to your people, and if you help other people get what they want, you will inevitably receive the same blessings multiplied.
Finally, the ultimate test of all these principles: never give up. You assert that winners are not born, they are made, and winning is an internal decision. What can we learn from the perseverance of someone like Abraham Lincoln?
Lincoln's life is just a monument to sheer perseverance. Look at his record. Failed in business, defeated for the legislature, failed again in business, suffered a nervous breakdown, defeated for Congress and the Senate repeatedly, before finally being elected president in 1860. He was never truly defeated because he never stopped trying. Winners never entertain the idea of quitting. Good people outlast bad times. I remember a sales leader who lost 80% of his team overnight due to political sabotage. He didn't quit. He didn't whine. He just started completely over with more focus and determination than ever. Today, he's a multimillionaire.
You also advise people never to make an emotional, panicked decision about their career.
Never make a decision about your entire future based solely on what happened today. We all have those kinds of days where the temptation to just toss it all in is overwhelming. When you're frustrated and ready to give up, don't act on it that day. Go home, sleep on it, and keep plugging away for just a little bit longer. Something will almost certainly happen to make you see things differently tomorrow.
And if the odds seem truly impossible, you point to the power of attitude, citing the determination of runner Glenn Cunningham.
Cunningham suffered terrible burns as a child. Doctors said he would never even walk again. But he used his burning determination to walk, then to run, and he eventually set a world's record in the mile. Impossible is not a condition. It is solely a state of mind. If you internally think a situation is hopeless, it probably is. If you believe it can be worked out, it probably can. When I looked back on my own life, I realized my past failures stemmed from my fear of failing. I was always holding something back, always had that ready-made excuse. When I finally decided to go all out and commit fully, everything changed. That internal decision is the ultimate key to winning.
Art, thank you for sharing the powerful lessons from pushing up people. This conversation gives our listeners a deeper understanding of leadership, belief, and what it truly means to succeed.
Thank you, Sunny. I hope these ideas encourage your listeners to believe bigger, work harder, and always focus on pushing others up.
This has been Sunny's Mindset Lab. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.